Hello, I am Certified Moth. Thank you for stopping into my video. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much. And if this is the first video of mine you've seen, welcome. Thank you for clicking on my video. This video is the first in what I plan to make a little mini-series on my channel called Cringe Central, where I essentially just purposely do all the things that I either haven't done or would not share online due to cringe culture. And just to speak on cringe culture a little bit, I think personally that it's really sad to see so many people, especially just young teens, being bullied out of harmless activities they enjoy. Like, I know I personally stopped doing a lot of things because I was just too embarrassed and worried someone would laugh at me when they really were just these harmless extensions of my creativity, and it's just too bad that I was limiting myself like that for just such a silly reason. So the first video I want to make for this series is a self-insert for Steven Universe, or as they're usually called, Gemsonas. So at the age of 12 or 13, I discovered Steven Universe and it changed me. I know it might seem silly, but it just completely opened me up to so many things. First of all, for the year or two before watching it, I only drew dragons and the occasional cat, which I mean, it was fine, but watching Steven Universe encouraged me to draw humans much more often. And I sadly have managed to lose literally all of those early artworks, but I very clearly remember making these silly little gemsonas where I would use food coloring as watercolors. Despite the fact that I own perfectly good watercolors, and I did at the time too, I just chose to do it with food coloring. Don't question the things I did at 12. As well, Steven Universe really opened me up to things I was unfamiliar with or uncomfortable with, particularly queer relationships. As a kid who had grown up in a small town and barely knew what being queer was, I personally really feel like Steven Universe was the first thing in my life to actually show me it's not bad to be different and queer, and that I truly believe that I wouldn't have realized I myself was queer a few years later if Steven Universe hadn't been that first stepping stone towards acceptance for me. So it has a special place in my heart of just being something that had such a huge impact on me as a kid. I found that Steven Universe at some point had become something I ended up forcing myself to distance from for fear of being cringe. I also kind of stopped watching it right around the time of the trial episode because there was a whole ass 7-month hiatus mid-season, and I managed to lose interest in the time span, but that's besides the point. I absolutely found brand new things to be obsessed with, but none of them I really look back on with quite as much shame as I did my obsession with Steven Universe. And there was this very weird culture looking back at it, where there was this absurd, nonsensical, and most of the time bigoted hatred towards the show, which was just being spouted as the objective truth. And unfortunately, I kind of believed it. It wasn't until recently where I found that there's sort of been an uptick in videos defending it that, well, it's not a perfect show. Steven Universe was a really good show that did a lot of amazing things, especially for the time that it came out, and there was really no shame in just enjoying it. Because of this realization, I wanted to make this first Cringe Central video Steven Universe themed, both as just a little throwback to my artistic roots, but also because it was probably the longest spanning example of me falling prey to cringe culture. So now, on to talking about the actual Gemsona. Well, I was considering finding a gem not already represented in Steven Universe. I realized, as I still have not finished the show, that I would just probably accidentally end up using one that's already in the show. So instead, I was looking through canon gem designs, and I realized that the Eggits actually have a very similar body type to me, minus I think they're missing a little bit of extra hip and thigh fat. And also, on the topic, just let me say that design diversity in Steven Universe is so amazing. There are so many different heights, weights, builds, and none of them are treated as being worse for being outside of the typical beauty standard in cartoons, which is just, I personally can't think of any other shows that have done that. I mean, I'm sure there are some. I'm not a huge cartoon watcher, but still, I think it's really cool. While I was googling different types of Eggits to decide which ones I wanted to make my Gemsona, I discovered that there's such thing as a moss Eggit, which is so cool. I love the aesthetic of moss, and Just the coloring of Moss Eggit is so sweet, it's really cool. I have pretty short hair right now, so I couldn't really include those like spiky triangular hair bun things that it seems like some Eggit designs have. So I ended up putting those sort of horizontal streaks of color just across my regular shorter hair, which I made sort of off-white to look like the veins of green in the Moss Eggit. I don't know if it actually looks like it, but that's what I was going for. I struggled a little bit with clothing design, which is as usual, but specifically because gem designs have these very tight-fitting clothing. Like, there's a few examples of characters who don't have tight-fitting clothing, like the Sapphires, but none of them were Eggits, and I tried, but adding loose clothing to mine just made it look less like a gem. And I find I do typically rely on loose, baggy clothing because, well, for one, I just like drawing it and it has a cool silhouette, but also because it's what I personally gravitate towards wearing every day. So I ended up settling on like this sleeveless collared shirt with a weird middle beltish section just to add some more visual interest to the torso. And then I made the back of the shirt fully open along the spine down to where I placed the gem on the bottom of my back, and yeah, it's inconvenient, but I thought that gem placement was cool at least. I also added these 2 pairs of lengthened digital artist gloves. And they aren't like that for any real reason, I just wanted to add gloves, and I thought it'd be good to make them kind of like the kind of glove I can be seen wearing most often. For the legs, I gave myself short shorts because if I'm being honest, if I didn't have thighs made of human flesh that chafed, I would wear short shorts all the time. I also added these thigh-high boots, sort of to call back to the Holly Blue Eggit design because I personally think her design is really sick. When it comes to the weapon I chose, I went with a big ol' sword, which I will fully admit was basically just copied with some very small changes from some random picture I found. I am not well versed in object design, especially not weapons, which I fully plan to work on in the future. Like, I don't want to just be copying stuff, but I ended up deciding to take the creative L and make a functional weapon that's unoriginal rather than one that doesn't make sense. So, and also don't ask me how my Gemsona pulls it out from the bottom of her back. I have no good answer. It doesn't make sense, but I think swords are cool and I'm not willing to compromise. As you may have noticed, there's been another character in this speed paint, because not only did I return back to my cringy self-insert art days, that's right, I brought a friend with me. This is my best friend, Caramel. Surprise, this is sort of a collab, not really. We both made Gemsona speed paints to post on our channels, and our Gemsonas are connected story-wise, so you're legally required to go check them out. Their socials are going to be in the description, their video is going to be linked. Their Gemsona is Lime Pearl, and in this little story we came up with, Lime Pearl is like Moss Eggit's pearl. Initially, the difference in the shades of green was unintentional. We designed these characters basically completely separately, with only the knowledge that the main color we were doing was green, but we ended up coming with a story that made sense with that. And what we came up with, maybe it's a bit silly, but I think it's fun. So basically, Moss Eggit stumbled her way into the Diamond's favor by exposing a high-standing gem as being a rebel to them. And so her social status went up and she convinced the Diamonds to spare the pearl of the rebel, and then the pearl was gifted to her. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know Steven Universe lore, but I don't know. Anyways. Over time spent around Lime Pearl, then Moss Eggit becomes more and more disillusioned with the way Homeworld works, and her Lime Pearl and her become closer and closer. And yes, this story is homoerotic. You should expect no less from me and Caramel. Well, anyways, it turns out the Lime Pearl was the rebel all along, not the gem they used to work under. And then they convinced Moss Eggit to rebel with them. Hell yeah! We haven't come up with much more than that, but I did design us a potential fusion. Pretty sick. The fusion isn't anything special. From Moss Eggit, it has the hair streaks, the goggles, the collar, and the gloves. And then from Lime Pearl, I sort of referenced the hairstyle, the see-through skirt, and more so of the body type. For the stuff that was more combined, I chose to combine Lime Pearl's leotard with Moss Eggit's back cutout. And then I combined the ballet shoes and the boots to make some sort of sturdier looking shoes. Then I also gave them 4 eyes and an extra arm. I know it's kind of typical for fusions to only have 1 extra feature, at least when it's between 2 gems. But Caramel found an example otherwise, so I went with it because I wanted to. I'm honestly not the biggest fan of this design. I really feel like I leaned too hard into throwing random parts of each of our characters on it, rather than considering who we would be as a combined individual and designing from there. So I think a big part of it is just I didn't plan it out ahead of time. It was just a bonus drawing, so I just started sketching. I didn't do any really designing process. So I'm definitely going to recreate it someday. That'll probably just show up in a sketchbook tour or something, but yeah. Anyways, if you made it this far through my rambling, thank you so much. I don't know how well this series will do, but it's a personal project that I'm really excited to do every once in a while, and I really want to make sure that I'm keeping a healthy balance of things I personally want to do and then things that I think will actually perform well. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Also, I just recently hit 200 subs. Thank you so much. That's really exciting. Let me know in the comments if you have any video requests or ideas, or if you have had any gemsonas or other self-inserts and what their stories are, because I would love to hear them. I love reading about people's OCs and inserts. Thank you so much. Have just a lovely day. Goodbye.